We need to talk about the possibility of Xenosaga Trilogy HD Remaster because there's been a number of people that have been asking about, well, now that Silksong is coming out, now that we've gotten pretty much all the other stuff that people begged for at potential Nintendo Directs, because if you don't know, there is a Nintendo Direct probably happening the second week of September, according to Nate the Hate, Switchforce, and VGC. So those are all pretty good sources now at this point, so it's happening. So people are wondering, what do we beg for next? And it looks like Xenosaga Trilogy has been what some people have been talking about. Now, since my last video where I talked about Xenosaga Trilogy HD Remaster, it's been about a couple of years. And honestly, I think that the percentage chances of this happening have significantly went up since the last time that I talked about this. And I'm going to give you a number of reasons why, in addition to something that seems like it's very likely to happen now at this point. But before we can get into exactly how Xenosaga HD Remaster happens, we got to talk about exactly logistically how it gets there. Bandai Namco owns the IP. For some reason, a lot of people think that Nintendo and Monolith Soft own the IP, or that Monolith Soft owns the IP, and they don't. Monolith Soft is the developer who worked with Bandai Namco on Xenosaga, but Bandai Namco retains the IP rights. Monolith Soft was a third-party freelance developer at the time when they worked on it, and then Nintendo purchased them after that. So Nintendo, Monolith Soft, they do not own Xenosaga, Bandai Namco does. Monolith Soft, Bandai Namco, and Nintendo work together to bring Cosmos and TLOs, to bring them over to Xenoblade Chronicles. And of course, we're going to talk about the other thing if you've played Xenoblade Chronicles Future Redeemed. Now, here's the thing about this, guys. The last time that we got any official word from Bandai Namco about a Xenosaga Trilogy HD Remaster was about 6 years ago. And what they said 6 years ago was definitely interesting because Katsuhiro Hadara, the games boss over at Bandai Namco, talked about it and said this was on December 26th, 2019 at 5:44 a.m. At least my time, 5:44 a.m. This actually progressed to the remaster's plan, but failed in a profitable market analysis. Sorry guys, this path will be difficult to resurface, ... So if we're looking at that 6 years ago plus 9 at this point, so what has happened in that 6 years that would make it a little bit better or very different from now? Well, one, Monolith Soft's profile is significantly better now at this point than it was before. Monolith Soft at that time, you're looking at around a year or so of Xenoblade sales. It had not become the most popular Monolith Soft game of all time at that point, but now it is. So that's definitely a big thing. You look at the popularity of Xenoblade now at this point. Since then, we've had Xenoblade Chronicles X, we've had Xenoblade Chronicles Definitive Edition, we've had Xenoblade Chronicles 3, Xenoblade Chronicles 3 Future Redeemed. There's been multiple titles since then, and more as people get into it, especially as they finish Xenoblade Chronicles 3 and Xenoblade Chronicles 3 Future Redeemed, more people want to get into Xenosaga because now we know confirmed that it is connected, and if you've played Future Redeemed, you know exactly what I'm talking about when it comes down to that. So I think that now at this point, it is significantly more possible. It is definitely more of a thing. Now that we know when it comes to Future Redeemed, now that we've seen the popularity, now that a lot more people have played that and want to understand, if you look at the videos and the views and all different type of stuff with Xenosaga, I think that it becomes far more profitable potentially to bring out a remaster of Xenosaga. And I'll also say this. Back in 2019, the Nintendo Switch 1 was successful, but it was not the guaranteed surefire success for Bandai Namco at that point. And remember, he said that they actually put it together when it comes to a proposition for Xenosaga, but they deemed that it wasn't profitable. Well, we don't know exactly when that was. That probably wasn't at the exact same time that he said that in 2019. That was probably a year or 2 years prior to that. So the Nintendo Switch 1, in terms of its popularity and what Bandai Namco was thinking, was probably not on the table at that point, or it wasn't anything that we could say, okay, yeah, look, it sold 100 million units or something. Now, after all of these years with the Nintendo Switch 1 and the amount of AA and AAA games that were able to sell what they were in the RPG realm, in the JRPG realm for Switch 1, you know that there's going to be a baked-in set base for RPGs with the Nintendo Switch brand and platform. So now I think that if you're doing a profit analysis, considering everything that we talked about with Xenoblade and what's going on there, on top of the Nintendo Switch 2 now dominating Japan, I think that it's very possible that Bandai Namco can reevaluate that and say, okay, it might be profitable now. We could actually make some money off of this, and we could do this for the fans. So I do think that Xenosaga Trilogy HD Remaster might just actually show up at a Nintendo Direct at some point. Now, will it be this one coming up? Probably not. But will it show up at some point during a Nintendo Direct in the Nintendo Switch 2 era? Yes, I do believe so, and I think that it's going to be absolutely legendary when it does. But let me know what you guys think about that in the comment section. But before we get into the next topic, please make sure you hit that like button, subscribe if you're someone new, and click that notification bell to get my videos as soon as they drop. But let's go ahead and move on to another highly anticipated game from many people out there, millions, and that is Hollow Knight Silksong. We've got an official release date that we did already know about, which is September 4th, but now we actually have the confirmed game prices and confirmed game time release windows. So this game will officially be released on Nintendo Switch 1, 2, Xbox Series, PlayStation, PC on September 4th at 7 a.m. PT, 10 a.m. ET, 4 p.m. CEST, and 11 p.m. JST. The price is officially $19.99, euros $19.99, and yen 2,300. So that is an incredible price. People were actually shocked that the game would be priced at that, and I thought that it would be a $30 game. I thought that they'd go a little bit above. I mean, if you look at what they did with Hollow Knight, the original, I think that was about 15 bucks. I think I bought a physical copy for about 20 bucks or something like that a number of years ago. But they actually went cheap on this one, and that's awesome. I think it's actually going to increase the sales even more, because that 20 bucks, it becomes pretty much an impulse buy or a FOMO buy for people who maybe are kind of on the edge, but they're hearing so much about it. So this is definitely a good thing overall, and I can see Hollow Knight Silksong selling a ton of copies, because when the original came out, it was a Kickstarter game. It was just kind of like, okay, another Metroidvania, but it kind of turned into its own beast overall. And they were able to sell 15 million copies of that game. But something tells me, like, I don't want to accuse them of potentially drawing up this hype to Silksong because it took so long and not talking about it and all that to build the mystique and the aura. But it almost was like they're like hidden geniuses doing that, because it really did build the mystique and I would say aura of Hollow Knight Silksong. For them to announce the game in 2019, I think Hollow Knight, the original, came out in like 2018 or something like that. And then they announced the sequel. They announced that in 2019, which I think was supposed to just be DLC, but then they got expanded into something else. But whatever. This game's history is twisted at this point. Then all of a sudden, like 6-7 years later, the game reemerges as people are begging for it each time at a direct or at an indie show and all of that. So it doesn't really matter how they got to this point. It just matters that they are here now. I cannot wait to play it myself. That is coming out on September 4th. That is this Thursday as of the time that I'm recording this video. Do you plan on picking up Hollow Knight Silksong? Let me know in the comment section below. But now we are going to move on to another topic here, and it does seem like some Star Wars Outlaws footage has leaked out, or essentially just came out from somewhere. The game is not out till September 4th as well. That is Hollow Knight Silksong Day, so that might be a little bit rough, but 40 minutes of gameplay has been posted to YouTube, and there was some concern over this game's performance. Now, one of the people that got a chance to play it, there's been no footage from any of like the demo shows or places that it was at, but Good Vibe Gaming reported that it wasn't necessarily so great. There was performance problems, some drops and things like that. Now, in this gameplay, there might be some drops that we can't see. I don't have any type of tester when it comes to frame rate or resolution or all of that, and obviously you're not comparing it to the Xbox and PlayStation version side by side. So once Digital Foundry gets a hold of it, once other people get a hold of it, they'll probably do all that, and they'll probably find some things here and there, as the Nintendo Switch 2 is not as powerful as the Xbox Series X or the PlayStation 5, so it's not going to run or look as good on those platforms. But I think for some people, especially if it's the updated version of Star Wars Outlaws, having a portable version of that game would be pretty appealing, not having to deal with portable PCs, for example. So I do think that there might be some value to this for some people. Now, when I watched the gameplay footage, it actually looked pretty good. It looked like it was 30 frames per second, maybe a dip or two here or there, but once again, it was kind of hard to tell. YouTube, you have the compression, I don't have anything hooked up to it, but it seemed like it was okay. Now, I'm not the only one who said that. Nintendo Everything actually posted this, and it does seem like it might be a little bit better. Now, you have to also remember this, guys. At these trade shows, at these events, those are usually not the final builds of the games. Those are usually the demo builds that were built out weeks before. And a lot of times, some of these teams are under some strain too, to get the demo build done, to get the final version done, to make all of the optimizations. You know, sometimes these publishers kind of push them, you know, so when you look at a demo build, or when you look at a build that's for a trade show, a lot of times it doesn't represent necessarily the final experience. The final experience could be a lot better, or it could be just as bad. But a lot of times you'll have like a day one patch, or you'll have something that does help out a bit. Not saying that Star Wars Outlaws is running perfect on the Nintendo Switch 2 and nothing's ever going to happen when it comes to the analysis. Not saying that, but just based off the gameplay footage that I saw here, because it seems like some people were saying that maybe it was okay in some of the indoor areas, then outdoor it was not necessarily great. So we see indoor and we see outdoor gameplay here. Now, there might be some other areas that are more taxing and maybe it's worse later down the line, but for right now, it does seem like it's okay with that. Now, I'm not a big Star Wars fan at all. I did not play Star Wars Outlaws on Xbox or PlayStation because it just didn't appeal to me too much. But I'm looking at this one because I'm interested in seeing how they converted one of the best looking games, one of the most taxing games on PlayStation and Xbox over to the Nintendo Switch 2. How is it going to handle it? Will it be able to handle other big games down the line? I know Digital Foundry spoke about how they were very interested in seeing this version of the game because of how taxing that game was on PlayStation 5 and Xbox Series X, and when they did their analysis back then when it came out. So it looks like maybe Ubisoft did some magic here with this system. I mean, we don't know if they're using DLSS or if they're doing stuff like that. I mean, the resolution could be insanely low. I'm watching on YouTube, so the compression is a thing as well. So I'm just not so sure, but from just the first impression of me watching, it doesn't seem as bad as maybe I thought that it would be based off of what GVG was reporting. Now, once again, those things could still be there and it could still be a problem overall, like once we get the final build and all that, because this is a good chunk of gameplay, but it's still just like the beginning part of it. And I think that maybe once you go into some other open-ended areas where you have more enemies coming through and it gets more intense, maybe that could cause more problems down the line overall with the game like this. But so far so good when it comes to what's happening here with Star Wars Outlaws on the Nintendo Switch 2. And I'm looking forward to seeing exactly what people think once we actually get the game released and they start analyzing it and all of that. So what do you guys think about that? You can let me know in the comment section. But for the next topic, we are going to discuss the Final Fantasy Tactics, the Ivalice Chronicles Enhanced Opening Strategy RPG is due out on September 30th. This is one of my top upcoming games that I talked about for the Nintendo Switch 2 and other platforms as well in September, the very end of September, so it does avoid a lot of the other bigger games like Trails in the Sky, although people are probably still going to be playing that by September 30th. Plus, also Daemon X Machina, Titanic Scion, and Silksong. So Square Enix has released the enhanced opening for a strategy RPG remaster, Final Fantasy Tactics. The dramatic tale of ambition, betrayal, and honor will come to life with an updated and enriched script with fully voiced dialogue alongside improved graphics that bring a new level of immersion and playability to the battlefield. Additionally, the enhanced version brings quality of life updates like new difficulties, a revamped UI, autosave, and more that make the game more accessible to newcomers. The game features strategic turn, based combat, and an elaborate character progression system that makes every battle exhilarating and filled with unexpected twists. Hailed as one of gaming's greatest stories, in this standalone game, players will step into the kingdom of Ivalice, a medieval world steeped in political conflict in which players uncover the truth. Now, there's of course a bunch of key features and cool stuff here, so I'm very much looking forward to this game. I think it's going to be really good. This opening is nice. I like all the quality of life features that they're adding, and I'm looking forward to picking up the game. And it's coming out on pretty much everything: PlayStation 5, Xbox Series, Nintendo Switch 2, PlayStation 4, Nintendo Switch 1, and PC via Steam, September 30th once again. So what do you guys think from Xenosaga, Star Wars, Silksong, and more? Let me know in the comment section below. Alright guys, that wraps it up for this video here. Thank you so much for watching. I do appreciate it. Please make sure you hit that like button, subscribe if you're someone new, click that notification bell, and check out my other Nintendo Switch 2 RPG content and more right here on screen. Thanks for watching, and we'll catch you guys for the next one. Peace.